All right, so now that we have talked about the couple trailers, let's talk about Marvel Hall H. So what I'm going to do first is we have a couple segments left, and I'm going to basically do a quick rundown of what we learned from the Hall H panel, and then we will do a more in-depth discussion at the end of the episode about the final announcement. If you haven't heard already, I don't know why I'm being so mysterious. Of course you've heard, it's probably in the title and the thumbnail and everything, but just to kind of have the pretense of suspense, let's go through all the announcements, and then we'll talk about the final one at the end of the episode. So Marvel had their Hall H panel. We're used to these being grand events. In fact, the past couple, they've gone up there and really just, thrown us their entire slate, which I think, honestly, once in a while is okay. Every year or every other year, I think, is a bit much, right? Especially with the volume of projects that they have going on. I think, actually, it works quite well to have this mixture of, maybe one year you focus on a few movies like they did this year. Another year, maybe you have a bunch of things in production. So you have like a quick speed run of 5 or 6 projects. But then the next year is more of a let's show you what's ahead kind of thing. And you kind of rotate that out, in and out here and there. The other thing too is that I also suspect that they will be doing these things anyways at D23 where they will be like, here's the next, 6 TV shows and a couple other movies like Shang-Chi 2 that we have. Because I remember they did this a couple Comic-Cons ago, right, where they announced all the Phase 4 stuff, and then a couple months later at D23, they were like, also Moon Knight, also She-Hulk, also Miss Marvel. And then I think they confirmed a couple other things as well in there, like another movie or something like that. So I suspect that at D23, which we will be trying to cover as it happens, I think, in a week, that I suspect that things like that will be happening as well, but we'll have to see about that. For now, in this panel in particular, Kevin Feige got up there. He said, we're focusing on 3 films that are coming out next year. Seems to indicate that Blade is not coming out next year, although iffy, who knows? Maybe he just, he said, I didn't hear his exact wording. I obviously wasn't in there myself. Maybe he said something like the next 3 films, or maybe he said 3 films that are, close to coming out or something like that, which doesn't exclude the possibility that Blade, doesn't come out in 2025 in November as it's slated right now. Then again, who knows? Honestly, that film may never come out. It may come out in 2027, 2026. Who even knows? So he said we're going to focus on 3 films. Ended up being a lie, but we'll get to that. And I wanted to go through some of my thoughts and the biggest reveals from the panel. So first up, we had Captain America Brave New World. The first trailer, guys, really did a lot for me because, well, yes, I enjoyed parts of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought it was a very flawed series, and a lot of storytelling issues in that series, but there were a lot of really good things in there. I think top of the list is definitely that transition from being Falcon to Captain America for Sam Wilson. I really think that they, if they had one job, and they did really have one job, is to make the audience believe, whoever watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I suspect that there will be a lot of people who watch Captain America 4 and go, oh, I vaguely remember 6 years ago at the time. Because when Captain America Brave New World comes out in 2025, it will have been 6 years, crazy, since Endgame. But I think, there will be enough people who come out to Captain America Brave New World and go, oh, yeah, I remember at the end of that movie, Steve Rogers handed him a shield, and so now he's Captain America. And so actually in that way, I almost think that the way that they're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier to Captain America 4 is almost the perfect way they should be doing these TV to movie transitions, right? Because, if you watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, will you know who Joaquin Torres is? Sure. Will you know who Isaiah Bradley is? Of course. Will you get the nuances of why those 2 characters are important to Sam? Absolutely. And why it's important that he's wearing his suit that he is at the beginning of the movie, the white suit, and then now he's wearing the blue suit. Yeah, for sure. But it's complicated, because I'm not saying that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is an unnecessary story, but I am saying that if you kind of go on the base, level, the surface level, right? Then Falcon and Winter Soldier could be just summarized as he starts out as Falcon, he ends as Captain America, something that if you didn't watch the show, you could have implicitly understood. And I think that actually really works, because again, not saying the show doesn't have value. I think the conversations about Isaiah Bradley in the war and the experiments that were done to him, and how America would accept or would not accept a black man being Captain America, those are really powerful conversations that were had in that series. And I appreciate those scenes the most, honestly. I don't really appreciate the, Sharon Carter flag smasher part of the show per se. But a lot of the other conversations, especially the ones with Sam and Isaiah, are wonderful. So I'm not saying that the show doesn't have value in itself. I'm just saying that from a story MCU plot perspective, it actually works out quite well, where you can go from Endgame to Captain America Brave New World and be like, yeah, I mean, that seems to make sense, at least from what I'm seeing from the trailers. All that aside, because I was not necessarily the biggest fan of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was a little hesitant about this film. I went, okay, and Red Hulk, by the way, not to bury the lead, Red Hulk is a character that I go, do we really need Red Hulk? I wasn't quite sure. I think it's one thing to have Bruce Banner kind of Hulk out and whatever. I'm just very hesitant to see a very old Harrison Ford. No offense to Harrison Ford. I don't mean old as in a bad thing. Just a very, like an elderly statesman. He's the president of the United States in the film. Turn into this giant red muscular CGI character. I don't know. People say who are there who saw the new footage where he actually hulks out. They say it's pretty good, and the design and the VFX are really good. I don't doubt that. I'm just saying that me personally, it wouldn't have been my first choice. But all that aside, it is happening. It's gonna happen. Leader's coming back from The Incredible Hulk, one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite MCU film. So a lot of things kind of going into my lack of excitement. But the first trailer did a lot for me. Did a lot for me to make me excited. It looked like it really was going back into that espionage paranoia thriller that I loved from The Winter Soldier. So we got some little tidbits here and there. Couple of which I was like, didn't we know this already? Couple of which I was like, oh, interesting, and the couple that are really exciting. So first thing that I thought we maybe knew, but maybe we didn't, is that Sam Wilson will not have the super soldier serum. I guess this wasn't explicit now that I think about it. But I also, I don't know, the fact that they felt like they had to make it explicit up there was interesting, at least. Maybe it'll be a big part of his story, or maybe it's another big fake out, and maybe he will have to take the soldier serum later on. There are a lot of super soldiers running around right now in the MCU, by the way. You have Bucky, you have US Agent, you have, you did have, I guess, Steve. Does Steve count? I don't really know. So you have Bucky, you have US Agent, all the power brokers, although Carly was killed. I guess Red Guardian also probably took the serum at some point. So a lot of super soldiers just running around here. And I think that it would work better narratively if Sam didn't have the super soldier serum. So there's that. We also got confirmation that Tim Blake Nelson is playing the leader, which, I don't know. I was following some Twitter feeds, and, one of them he said something like, revealed, Tim Blake Nelson reveals that Mr. Blue is the leader. And Mr. Blue from The Incredible Hulk, if you remember, he was texting as Mr. Green to Mr. Blue trying to find a cure, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I mean, didn't we know this already? I was a bit confused about all of that. But anyways, if you weren't, 100% sure, now we're 100% sure. So yeah, there's that. Something that kind of fits into this camp of I thought we knew this, but maybe not, because maybe there was some ambiguity, but it appears that there isn't, is that Red Hulk is indeed Thunderbolt Ross. Now, there were some interesting, and I would say unlikely, but interesting theories going around when the first trailer came out, that because it's very intentional that we don't see Red Hulk's face at the end of the trailer. Maybe they're trying to hide the fact that Thunderbolt Ross isn't the Red Hulk, and it's someone else. Unlikely, because the Red Hulk in the comics is Thunderbolt Ross, and you have Thunderbolt Ross in the film. It would feel like a very odd fake out unless there was a very good reason for that in the story. And this is coming from someone who, again, I personally didn't really want to see Red Hulk in this film, but now that we're getting him, and he looks really good in the trailer, as does Harrison Ford, who looks like he's having a lot of fun. It's a big contrast from when he was doing press for the Star Wars films, I will say, which is kind of funny. Anyways, it is confirmed from the trailer and from Harrison Ford's mouth himself that, yes, Red Hulk is Thunderbolt Ross. Okay, great. Now we get to the two announcements that are quite interesting. One has been rumored for quite a while, but not confirmed. And the other has not been rumored at all, which I want to kind of, before we get into Thunderbolts, want to talk very briefly about scoop culture, which I think needs to be addressed a little bit. Because, yeah, scoop culture can be right, but I think it needs to be called out when it's wrong. But anyways, we will get there. So the first thing that these scoopers had been rumoring for a long time is that Tiamat is going to be a part of Captain America: Brave New World. Kevin Feige confirmed. He confirmed this about a week ago when he talked about Eternals 2, which is very sad. He said Eternals 2 is not happening, but you will explicitly see the ramifications of that film in other films, especially one that with a trailer that just came out, which was obviously Captain America: Brave New World, and now they confirmed it here. From what I hear from the trailer footage, it sounds like they're referring to it as Celestial Island, and not only that, but we are getting adamantium in this film. So it looks like the Celestial is going to be made out of adamantium. Now, what this means for the wider MCU, I talked about this briefly in that breaking news video. I don't know. It actually could open a ton of possibilities. For example, I personally think this points directly towards I think it points towards a couple avenues. Obviously one being Wolverine at a certain point, right? Because you don't introduce adamantium without having Wolverine in the back of your mind. Okay, that's that. How he fits into the MCU, though, is more interesting. And I think that what you might be looking at here is something where this has been rumored for a while now, but because of how scarce of a resource vibranium was and how important it became in Wakanda Forever, with 2 nations now having vibranium and those 2 nations having, somewhat of a truce at this point. And then with the hint that Namor wanted to attack or was waiting for other nations to come and attack them and whatever, I think we are heading towards a full out vibranium adamantium war panic kind of thing, where if these Wakandan nations and who knows, maybe Shuri makes an appearance in this film, because I think these precious metals are very interesting, would be of big interest to characters like the Black Panther. So maybe Shuri shows up, maybe Namor shows up, but I think we are heading towards kind of an all-out war over these resources. Yeah, like maybe the rest of the world says we don't need vibranium anymore. They just go after adamantium, which freaks the Wakandans out. Maybe the Talokans, I don't know what the specific word is, but Talokan out as well, and they all kind of band together and there's a war. I don't know. That's generally my thought. And if that's where they go, I would have a hard time believing that Weapon X, Wolverine himself, is not a part of that war in some capacity. Perhaps coming after Secret Wars, maybe before. But, I think it would be, it seems to be, this is where this is one of the possible avenues, I should say, that it seems like they're heading. So there is that. And finally, one of the things that Scoopers had gotten entirely wrong, which I want to address in just a second, is that Giancarlo Esposito, who all these Scoopers had been claiming was going to play GW Bridge. I have no idea who GW Bridge is, even after people explained to me. I was like, okay, whatever. And honestly, frankly, I don't really know who this character is either, but I think that's fine because we're going to get introduced to him, and it seems like he'll be coming back for a Disney Plus show. Giancarlo Esposito is playing Sidewinder, who is the king of the Serpent Society. Now, before we get into Serpent Society and Sidewinder, just want to address this because, look, for these scooper people, right? It's fine to listen to them and kind of just read through their tweets or whatever and go, yeah, I mean, like, sure, they're right some of the time. Because, yeah, I mean, they were right for the most part with this adamantium, Tiamat, Celestial kind of thing. Great. Not saying that some of the sources that they have aren't reliable. Or they, maybe, I don't know, guessed right. I don't know. But it's, I'm not saying it's not fun to kind of read through these tweets. I do myself. I keep up with these news things, and, I kind of pocket these in the back of my mind and go, okay. But I think it's really important as well to really not treat these reports as, as gospel, and to really just focus in, if you want to go off of official news or whatever, to just go off of the ones like Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, because with all these leaks and rumors, who knows, right? Maybe these were actual sources that just got information wrong or whatever, but they can be wrong. And I know this because this is a recent example of this, right? With all these sources saying Giancarlo Esposito was playing GW Bridge. Everyone was so confident. And Giancarlo came out and he was like, no one's guessed that. And he could have been lying, for sure. Turns out he wasn't, because who was talking about Sidewinder? Nobody. And so I just want to say, because not to just disparage scoopers, that's not what I'm here to do, But to say that, especially with all these cameo reports and all these other things going on, it can really get us to build an image of a film before we see it in our own heads. And then when those things don't happen, we get disappointed. And I think that that's actually quite dangerous, because I think it makes our expectations ruin what was otherwise a good experience. And so, I just want to say, I think this is a good lesson for me as well, but hopefully for the rest of us, that these people who scoop things, I'm not saying that they're not reporting what they're hearing, but sometimes what they're reporting is incorrect. And in this case, everyone said GW Bridge, and it was wrong. So just want to put that out there. Anyways, in terms of Sidewinder as a character himself, really don't know a lot about him. But as the king of the Serpent Society, I think it is interesting. I suppose no stone goes unturned for Kevin Feige, because obviously the Serpent Society was going to be, or was the fake title of that the third Captain America film. And then they obviously did that bait and switch, and they turned it into Captain America Civil War. What role the Serpent Society is playing is interesting, because I think that it was reported earlier, obviously, that Serpent Society was going to be playing a much bigger part of Captain America Brave New World, and yet it looks like, with recent reshoots and all that going on, it looks like the Serpent Society was going to be cut out of the film, or at least their role was going to be greatly reduced. But now I'm not so sure. I do worry a little bit that this film is getting a little bit overstuffed. You have Giancarlo Esposito, Serpent Society going around there. You have Red Hulks. You might even have Green Hulks showing up. You have the leader. So, I worry a little bit, especially Adamantium, Tiamat. So maybe the film is getting a little crowded, but again, MCU films are generally pretty good at juggling these sorts of things. So I have no doubt that things will be fine. It's just something I wanted to bring up here as well. So anyways, we talked about Captain America Brave New World a lot, also mostly because that's the one that we have the most to talk about, but the next couple have a couple little interesting tidbits here and there. I'm going to speed run through them a little bit more before we get to the ending announcement. Okay, so next up we have Thunderbolts. And honestly, Thunderbolts, we did not get a ton of information on, honestly. We got the cast on stage, and we got another tease that the asterisk means something, but we're not allowed to know until we watch the movie. I still think, even if that asterisk means something, maybe it's the symbol for Sentry, or I don't know. Maybe because the Thunderbolts are a footnote in some document. I don't know. I just think it's kind of weird, and I don't think it should have been part of the title itself. But anyways, it is. I also think the logo now is really lame. It's just thin font. But yeah, regardless. So the cast was on stage. I think Louis Pullman was there as Sentry, as Bob. I forget Bob's last name, but Bob somebody. They made some jokes about it, I think, on stage. And yeah, we got to see the cast. The one thing that is interesting to me, and I suppose this is the one big reveal that we did get, which I question whether it's actually truthful or not. So before we get to that, actually, I wanted to say we got the cast on stage. They look like they're having a great time. David Harbour showed up in costume. I love David Harbour. He's awesome. And then the trailer footage, everyone said it was really interesting. It looked like they were all individually sent to this one particular place, and it was all set up, which I think that's really interesting. So yeah, I can't wait for it. But the one interesting tidbit that I did hear from this panel is that allegedly, because the moderator basically said, so Kevin, we just had Thunderbolt Ross on the stage with Harrison Ford, and this team is called the Thunderbolts. Now, before I get to Kevin's answer, I want to say that all these questions are vetted beforehand. There's no way that these questions aren't pre-approved by Marvel. And this is Marvel's PR spin, right? They want to get all the information that they want to get out, into the public. And so the fact that this question was even asked in the first place makes me a little suspicious, actually, because Kevin Feige's answer was then, sometimes in the comics things have the same name. There's no relation. And that makes me really pause, because on the one hand, he could be right. On the other hand, all these circumstances lining up, you have Captain America and Thunderbolts back to back. Okay, Thunderbolt Ross is the Red Hulk in the first film. Okay, maybe he dies in that film, and maybe this team is called the Thunderbolts in his name. That could be simple. What I don't buy is that there's zero connection, because I think that Thunderbolts is such an interesting name, and just to have another character called Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, especially with Kevin Feige, I would assume, approving this question to go out and beforehand, is super, super fascinating to me. And so while he says there's no connection, I personally don't buy it. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot from the Thunderbolts panel. We'll be getting that film, I think, in May of 2025, so it should be exciting. And finally, the last big film panel that they did, obviously they talked about a couple other things at the end, but the last big thing in terms of substance here was the Fantastic Four, which has been renamed to Fantastic Four First Steps. I think it's cute. I think it's fine. Did it really need a title change? Not really, but it got one, so yeah. It seems like it's really leaning into the space race and this retro alternate universe 60s film, which I think is very exciting. It seems like they shot some test footage as well, which they showed interspersed with some concept footage as well, which everyone seemed to really like. It seemed to have a very distinct tone with that retro future, but 60s kind of setting, which I think is really awesome. And it seemed like the cast really genuinely were gelling together, which I think is just such a great sign, because that's what you really need if the Fantastic Four are going to be such an integral part of the MCU moving forward. It seems like they all really like each other, which I know seems kind of silly, but you got to have that kind of chemistry in there, right? Which is it's I think it's really cool to see. Other little tidbits here and there. The test footage included Galactus, which I saw a couple leaked pictures of. It looks interesting. Looks a little more human, actually, than I thought with the eyes. Seems like they're on some game shows as well. And yeah, I think that's all really awesome. Couple other little things here and there is that both, the Fantastic Four will be in both Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. And that's really cool. I think, I really stand by the fact that the Fantastic Four, along with the X-Men, will be the big anchors for the next little bit of the MCU going forward. So I think it's really important that they get this right, which I think they will. Also, Matt Shakman, by the way, was born to make this kind of movie. If you're going to make this specific kind of Fantastic Four movie, Matt Shakman, with his WandaVision directing in all the sitcom eras and stuff like that, I think is just the perfect guy. So I think that's really exciting. I know John Watts was going to direct this film. Honestly, though, with the direction that they're going now, I think this is awesome news. I really hope John Watts, by the way, gets some more work in the MCU now that he's officially not directing Avengers 5 and 6, and he's not directing Fantastic Four. I hope he comes back to the MCU, because it cannot be stated enough how incredible of an achievement those 3 Spider-Man films were, especially that they were done in 2017, 2019, and 2021. In a span of 5 years, we got 3 Spider-Man films. That's amazing. Anyways, I digress. Fantastic Four and new title. And yeah, I think that's about it. So we got the cast there, and then they went off stage, and Kevin Feige said, okay, so one other thing, kind of in the vein of Steve Jobs. And that one other thing, the screen went dark. There was a montage of Civil War, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame, and the Russo brothers, who have been rumored as of late to be the directors of the next 2 Avengers films, came up on stage and officially announced that they will be. What's more important to me, actually, is who's writing these films. And yeah, it turns out that Marcus and McFeely wrote all 4 of those Russo brother films, and it looks like McFeely is going to be writing these 2 Avengers films. A little bit of a bummer that it's not going to be the duo, and I hope that that's not going to be a detriment. I hope it doesn't, we don't realize by the time Avengers 5 and 6 come out that, oh, no, it was Marcus who was, kind of the real driver behind the dialogue and everything like that. I doubt it. I think it's going to be totally fine. And so, yeah, I think all things considered, this is great news. I heard a report recently that they're paying the Russos an incredible amount of money to come back, which I'm sure they're banking on the fact that if they can get themselves back on track, if they can get people looking forward to these 2 Avengers films like they had been with other films, and they frankly don't have a lot of time in terms of projects. Like, I don't think Agatha or Ironheart or Armor Wars or, I'm sure Daredevil will be exciting, but I don't think those are going to move the needle per se. We'll see. But, you have Captain America, you have Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, maybe Blade, and then maybe Doctor Strange 3, maybe Shang-Chi 2, and then you head into your Avengers films. And I don't know. I think they're banking on the fact that these Avengers films are guaranteed billion-dollar films, which I'm sure they will be, if they're anything close to good. And I don't know if they're going to make that kind of 2 billion kind of mark that the other Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgame, did. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's why I guess they feel so confident in giving the Russos that much money. Speaking of that much money, though, they revealed the title of Avengers 5. It's Avengers Doomsday, which will come out in May 2026, and Avengers Secret Wars in May 2027. That's exciting. But then what came out was the big showstopper. So a bunch of Doctor Doom, people dressed up in Doctor Doom costumes came out on stage, and they said, we need the greatest actor to play this character. And it was Robert Downey Jr. That's incredible. And the final segment will be me talking about why, and where I think it could go from here. But I personally was quite excited. I heard a couple of my friends saying this is very desperate. It feels like they're reaching here. It feels like they don't know what they're doing. I get that on the one hand, but I think there's a fine line between desperation and course correction. And to me, this feels more like course correction. Perhaps that's just more of a subjective, maybe I'm more optimistic. But I think seeing Robert Downey Jr. back, who, again, speaking of money, apparently they're going to pay him something like $80 million for these two films, which is just unbelievable. Again, they're banking on the fact that these two films will make combined at least $2 billion, which not that it's a safe bet, but if these two films are good, I think these two films could make $3 billion combined. So I suppose that's their calculation there. Regardless, though, it's a lot of money for just this one guy, especially if you're going to consider that these two films will probably have like 60 other MCU characters, and probably like your Hugh Jackmans are going to get a payday, Ryan Reynolds, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, all those guys will probably get a huge payday. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be super interesting to see how that works out there. But regardless, Robert Downey Jr. is back as Victor Von Doom, is what they said in the panel. So that is exciting. That's how they ended the show. It just went out with a bang. And I think, all things being equal, we'll see about the TV shows, what they talk about them at D23. I'm excited, though, about where this is all heading. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think and if you guys are excited about these announcements as well.